Hello, welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. Smash the like button if you love me. Subscribe if you're new. Please have your say. A very warm welcome to Sunday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. Your DC headlines today. A low-key Ezra Miller will be present at a low-key premiere for the Flash movie just 4 days before the release of the movie. And so Ezra Miller will be there. He will be posing for pictures, but he will be answering no questions. There will be no interviews with Ezra Miller in terms of the marketing of The Flash. We also know that a Flash sequel was written a while back. Walter Hamada wanted to do a Flash sequel. He wanted to greenlight it and announce it before the first movie was released. We'll get into that as well. It's pretty much old news, but it's doing the round at Access Media, by the way. But there's nothing new here, but we will get into the details of that original Flash sequel as well. And WB are attempting to hide the real ending of the Flash movie and the post-credit scenes, of course. But first of all, let's focus on this low-key Ezra Miller appearance at the premiere for the Flash movie just a mere 4 days before the film's release. Now, we all knew this was going to happen, that they wasn't going to use Ezra Miller vocally in interviews in the promotion and marketing of the Flash movie, and it's because of his previous criminal conduct. But I think it goes deeper than this, because I think Hollywood have no shame, and I think they'd be quite happy for Ezra Miller to do interviews for the promotion and marketing of the Flash movie. I think the problem is they don't know what he's going to say. I think this man is so mentally incompetent of even conducting himself or themselves properly in interviews, and I think that's why he's being gagged. I think ever since his fake bullshit apology, which is exactly what it is, just to sell this movie and get this movie out the way, he's been under house arrest. I think these studios are very powerful people, and when it comes to making money, when it comes to the bottom line, they're not going to let some actor running around breaking the law, losing their minds, ruin their chance of making money. So I think they've been keeping a very big eye on Ezra Miller. I think the reason Ezra Miller won't be doing interviews because I don't think they're capable of doing interviews. It must be very nice having diplomatic immunity in Hollywood. This wasn't the diplomatic immunity Johnny Depp got for doing nothing wrong, for breaking no laws. They removed him from Fantastic Beasts just like that. And the guy literally did nothing wrong. And they knew he did nothing wrong. J.K. Rowling tried to protect him, but she couldn't because Warner Brothers said he has to go. Because public perception and political correctness is everything in Hollywood. New Hollywood 2016 to 2023, an era of Me Too and Time's Up. Two kind of organizations that were set up to protect people from harassment and abuse in Hollywood, but it was all a propaganda tool. And basically men weren't being protected via Me Too and Time's Up, just a handful of very important women. Basically, the rest of the victims weren't being protected. And I mean, you just look at this situation and you look how toxic it is with Ezra Miller, how they're protecting them. Now, listen, they don't give a shit about Ezra Miller. They want this film released without any controversy. They want to try and get back as much of the money that they've spent, which is around 190 million, 200 million budget on this film. And that's without the huge marketing drive, because they really spent a lot of money. I mean, how much did it cost to force Stephen King to watch this movie and to force Tom Cruise to watch this movie and say nice things publicly about this movie? It's been a very interesting, smart promotional drive, considering they haven't been able to use Ezra Miller. What I would ask Ezra Miller right now, was it worth it, Ezra? Was it worth your association with a child? Was it worth it? You know, everything you've been accused of, like, you know, throttling a young woman in Iceland, you know, these things, was it worth it to sacrifice your career? Because Ezra Miller's career is over. Once this movie's released, once they drain this movie of everything it can make, it's over for Ezra Miller. They're going to put him in a moving car and chuck him out of Hollywood Boulevard, basically. Ezra Miller is done. There will be no continuation of Ezra Miller's The Flash. And if you are an Ezra Miller Flash fan and you think there's any chance of this actor returning as this character, you haven't got a hope in hell. Not in the central James Gunn universe. If the Snyderverse is ever restored, I'm quite confident that Zack will make sure that Ezra is involved, and I think Ezra will be safer under Zack Snyder's wing because Zack Snyder cares about Ezra Miller. Zack Snyder cares about people, but Warner Brothers don't. They sucked this person dry. They broke him mentally. You know, they've been in the industry since they were a small boy, and this is what damaged Ezra Miller and their mental health. This is where we are. But right now, they need to have him under house arrest. And he, you know, it's interesting that they want him to be seen at the premiere. They want pictures of them, should I say. I apologise for misgenderising Ezra. But yeah, you know, they want pictures of Ezra, but they don't want Ezra to speak. I think it's very damaging that Ezra isn't part of any interviews. And I think it's a problem because Ezra fought so hard for this movie. Ezra wanted desperately to make the best Flash movie that they possibly could. And I think they didn't make the best Flash movie they possibly could, because I think the best Flash movie they possibly could make would be a good origin solo movie, or a more, you know, kind of source material, faithful Flashpoint movie. So I don't think they made the ultimate best Flash movie they could have done, but I think they have made a very entertaining, very good Flash movie. But it's not the best it could be. But Ezra really fought hard for this film. And I'm glad they get to go to the premiere despite all the wrongdoings that Ezra Miller's done, because Ezra Miller fought hard for this movie. And there's no question, I absolutely understand that. So no interviews from Ezra Miller. Michael Keaton and Jason Momoa will not be at this premiere, and Jason Momoa is in the Flash movie. Jason is busy with other schedules, making another film, filming. Same with Michael Keaton. That's why they will not be at, I think, is it the London premiere? I'm not sure where the premiere is, but it's a premiere 4 days before the movie's released. No interviews from Ezra Miller. That's where we are with that. Now, doing the rounds in Access Media is the script for the sequel of the Flash movie. There will be no sequel for the Flash movie. But Underwater Armada, there would have been. A sequel, basically, that has Ezra Miller's Barry Allen diving back into the Speed Force and into the timeline to search for Ben Affleck's Batman, Batfleck, because he's gone missing at the end of the movie when Barry apparently fixes the timeline, but basically has rebooted the universe, and the universe has changed. It's not the same old DCEU anymore. Henry Cavill's Superman has vanished. Batfleck has vanished, and the whole point of The Flash 2 was for Barry Allen to go searching for them within the Speed Force and the multiverse. And it was going to be another multiversal movie. Yes, Sasha Calle and Michael Keaton would have reprised their roles as Batman and Supergirl in this movie, because they were the Batman and Supergirl of the brand new timeline anyway. So they were always going to be involved in the Flash sequel. So this is doing the rounds about this Flash sequel script. As far as I know, Christina Hodson wrote this script as well, along with another writer whose name escapes me right now. But that film now is never going to happen. So You can take that to the bank. Never happening, but Variety have done this big spread and they're talking about this sequel to the Flash movie, the script that's been put on ice. We've known about this for a very long time, so I don't know why they're talking about it again. I think they're just trying to make noise about this movie. They're just trying to create some interest towards this movie. But personally, if Ezra Miller was mentally competent enough to do interviews, I think Ezra Miller should do interviews. I'd be very, very disappointed if I knew that Ezra is capable of doing interviews and they're not allowing them to do interviews. Because I think it would have been very important to listen to Ezra Miller, in what he's got to say or what they've got to say about this movie. And I think it's highly disappointing that they won't be doing any interviews, but obviously for the studio, it's good that Ezra will be available for photos. So when they, when the broadsheets, publicize that premiere, at least they'll have photos of Ezra Miller. But yeah, it's very, very sad. It's a rarity. It never happens. A star of a movie is so important, whether that's Ezra Miller or Harrison Ford. You need the star of the movie to be doing interviews. So it's somewhat really, really problematic that they won't be doing any interviews as far as I'm concerned. I think this hurts the movie. Now, the question is, after this premiere and the lack of any coherent kind of quotes from the star of the movie, can the Flash movie make $1 billion? And it's a question that's been asked of me by you lot a lot. And it's a difficult one because, as we all know, the past 5 DCEU movies haven't fared very well in the box office. Some because of the pandemic and some had nothing to do with the pandemic. The failure of Birds of Prey had nothing to do with the pandemic. That was released weeks before the pandemic. They tried to say it was because of the pandemic and people were getting scared to go out. No. Birds of Prey failed because Birds of Prey failed. It's as simple as that. But 5 back-to-back global box office failures doesn't fill me with great confidence about the Flash movie. Now, the culture and environment behind this movie is a lot of whispers saying how good it is, and they're trying to create that environment. It's a really, really good movie, Oh yeah, best superhero movie since Superman the movie. And Batman 89 and The Dark Knight and all of that. Of course, that's not true, but that's the environment they've tried to create around the movie, that this is a very special movie and everybody's going to love it. And so it's going to be very interesting if this clever marketing from David Zaslav is actually going to work. Now, projections say it opens domestically to a soft 70 million. Projections are rarely wrong, but projections have been known to be wrong. Let's look at Justice League. Projections for Justice League were huge, and it ended up opening to, I think, did it open to about 50 million domestically? Now, if you're wondering how much 50 million domestically is, it's very low. Think about this. The Flash movie is projected for 20 million more, and they're calling that a soft domestic opening. So Spider-Verse I think Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which is the sequel to the first, Spider-Verse animated movie from Sony, which everyone is really enjoying going to see, by the way. And I haven't seen it yet, but I definitely want to go and see that movie. Now that's going to clear around 120 million domestically, just domestically. Now that would tell you globally that may reach a 300 million plus global domestic weekend, which is very, very good. So the Flash movie would at least have to do about the same to get anywhere near of $1 billion. And I think $1 billion would be very, very important for the Flash movie. That would be a measure of success, because $1 billion has only happened once, and in the DCEU, and it was we were surprised, because at that point we'd had Man of Steel, a Superman movie, didn't make $1 billion. BVS, a Batman and Superman movie that didn't even make $1 billion, but Warner Brothers wanted $2 billion. That's a fact. Suicide Squad, that actually did quite well for the studio, but the divisive reaction to it, the studio were getting fed up of the negativity. Wonder Woman just about limped to 800 million, another movie that didn't make $1 billion, and if any movie was going to make $1 billion, it should have been that one, because it's one of my favourite CBMs ever. Justice League was never going to make $1 billion, but the movie after Justice League, which was a disaster, Justice League was a disaster, right? A PR disaster. But somehow the movie that came after it, Aquaman, actually made $1 billion because it's a bloody good movie. But you would think that Batman versus Superman had more of a chance of $1 billion, at least $1 billion, than Aquaman. So the DCEU, as you can see, has been very, very surprising. So since Aquaman, we've had Shazam, not a very strong box office, but made a profit. Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman 84, James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, Black Adam, Shazam, Fury of the Gods, all have been financial disasters for the studio. Now, any other studio may have given up on DC by now. That's a lot of disasters. And don't forget that the other movies, apart from Aquaman, made under $1 billion. So there's nothing really telling them that they were doing a good job. The reason they've only made $1 billion movie is not DC's fault. It's not that people don't want to go DC movies. It's the reputation and handling from Warner Brothers on DC. That's what's damaged it. So the audience are very smart and alert. They know what they want to see and they know what they don't want to see. That's why DC hasn't been very successful. Not because people don't like DC, because of the mishandling of DC. And the general audience are deemed to be very dumb sheep, but they're not. They don't listen to the reactions of advanced screenings. They don't listen to Shield. They understand. They know the mission. They work really hard for their money, and they're not going to spend it on a piece of shit just because Tom Cruise or Stephen King tell them it's a great movie. They have to want to go and see this movie. I think the marketing has been at least solid, better than the marketing for the other movies. I think the Suicide Squad marketing was pretty cool, but James Gunn was in charge of that. James Gunn is a pretty good marketing god, if you ask me. A bit like Zack Snyder. There are some directors from New Hollywood today that are good at promoting their own content, and I think Zack Snyder and James Gunn are two directors that have a talent in promoting and pushing forward their content, but they've got a strong fan base as well, which I also think is important today. So yeah, I mean, I respect the fact that you guys, want to know if I think the Flash movie will make $1 billion, but it's very unpredictable what this film will actually make. It's an interesting thing because they've pushed it. They've told us this is a brilliant movie. The CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery says it's the best superhero movie he's ever seen. Clearly, it's the only superhero movie he's ever seen. The Flash movie is a really good movie. There's no question about that. But will it make the money? Have they convinced the general audience that this film is worth seeing in a very busy June? So by the time this film is released, the Spider-Man movie, the animated one, Across the Spider-Verse, as you can see, lots of hype around it, everybody loves it, would have been in movie theatres for 2 weeks. But this is why I think it's interesting timing of the release of the Flash movie in this month. You've also got the Indiana Jones movie as well. So it's a very crowded month. So it could be a situation where the Spider-Verse movie, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, is still doing really, really strong and having, having strong holds in the first 2 weeks. If that's the case, that movie will still have 2 weeks of life at least to make good money in movie theatres. That could hurt the Flash movie. There's no question about that. Reason number one. And another unpredictable movie, which we don't know how badly or how well it's going to do, is Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones 5. And the Dial of Destiny. The reaction at Cannes wasn't good, but it's another movie that can hurt The Flash. But nothing's going to be in the way of The Flash in terms of new releases. So it's very, very interesting. So, look, the marketing's been done. There's a good aura around this film. People are saying it's a great film. So, potentially, this should open up really, really big. I mean, I think it shouldn't be opening up, the Flash movie shouldn't really be opening up to 70 million. Now, that would be a big problem, not just for this movie, and the DCEU generally has had these kind of disappointing openings, but it would say that James Gunn has got a lot of fixing to do if this movie opens up at 70 million. Opening up at 70 million domestically is not good, people. It's not good at all. When you've got a Spider-Verse movie opening up potentially to around 115 to 120 million. Same with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. 70 million is a shit opening domestically. I can't even pamper it for you. I can't even spin this narrative. 70 million, anything under 100 million is shit. But the Flash movie should be opening about the same as Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. And if it doesn't, and if it does open to under 100 million domestically, that's really, really bad. And there's no way around it. So it's going to be very interesting. It's unpredictable if the mainstream audience, if general audiences have swallowed the marketing tactics of Walter Hamada. He's not even there anymore. Or is he? Who knows? I think secretly, I think that Toby Emmerich and Walter Hamada and all those guys are still there. I sniff it. I sniff it with this recent Variety article as well. These are the kind of variety articles we used to get when Emmerich was there. I think these people are in the background and they're still very much involved. But the problem is, with the opening of the Flash movie, we should be able to gauge whether it's going to do well or not. The projection of a soft 70 million opening isn't great. And how wrong can projections be at the end of the day as well? This is another problem. So this is an important movie. Make no mistake, even though this movie is part of the old leadership of DC and, James Gunn's doing his own thing, this movie is important because if they can't get at least 110 to 120 million opening domestically for a movie that's got a good vibe around it, then how is Superman Legacy going to do any different? Now, this is interesting as well. But then we have to, let's just say it does open up softly at 70 million. What are the reasons for this? Well, like the controversy that Superman Legacy won't have is that Ezra Miller will have nothing to do with that movie. Fingers crossed, right? He won't. They won't. But, so that's a big reason. Number one, that the Flash movie may open up softly at 70 million is Ezra Miller and their conduct. I think Ezra Miller is still damaging potentially to this film. We had the discussions months and months ago. How are they going to do this? Are they going to shelve the movie? Are they going to get a tax write-down for this movie? When you look at the amount of, the billions of dollars Disney are getting for their tax write-downs of their Disney Plus content, you kind of do ask the question, why didn't they attempt to do it with The Flash? And I really don't know. I think James Gunn wanted this movie to be released. He wanted to use it as a backdoor entrance for his own universe. I think that's a mistake. We should have just entered the brand new James Gunn universe randomly with no rhyme or reason. And I think that was a mistake. But the Flash movie is being released and they'll get their money back and make a little bit of a profit. But that's not the point. Now, let's jump to Superman Legacy. Superman Legacy it's an interesting film as well, because there'll be no controversial figure there, but it's all about the casting of Superman. Make no mistake, because if they cast a good lead that everybody likes, people will soon get over the fact that Henry Cavill's not involved. But if the fans don't like who Gunn has cast as Superman, then people are going to be remembering, Henry Cavill's name forevermore. It's amazing, really, for all the years where everyone's been talking about Christopher Reeve, there'll never be another Christopher Reeve as Superman. Now, all of a sudden, Henry Cavill is taking on that mantle as the impossible replacement. You know, and that's interesting. All of a sudden, Henry Cavill has become an iconic Superman because Henry Cavill is an iconic Superman. And as I say every single day on this channel, the treatment of Henry Cavill is disgusting. But let's be clear, bringing Henry Cavill back as Superman in Gunn's universe would have been difficult, as I said before. Does he wear the black costume? Does he wear the blue costume? You know, is it a new design? You know, does he play the Snyder Superman? Does he play a lighter Christopher Reeve Superman? You know, with a brand new actor, you get a clean slate. And that's one of the reasons that Gunn's done this. I don't believe that Gunn has any issues with Henry Cavill, but he understands the problematic nature of Cavill's Superman. And the problematic nature is, one minute he's part of the Snyderverse, then he's part of the Justice League verse, and you don't know if you're named Fred or fucking Alice in the end. It's fucking confusing for the general audience, and I think this is one of the major reasons that James Gunn started again. But make no mistake, the treatment of Henry Cavill is disgusting. We're seeing it in this Flash movie as well, where, you know, he should have been there. I say this every day. He should have been there. There's no justification. He should have got a chance to say goodbye to the fans as Ben Affleck is getting to do. What's the difference between Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill? It makes you wonder. Either your face fits in Tinseltown or it doesn't. And it's a big shame. And there was resistance to the casting of Henry Cavill because he was British. There's a lot, you know, we talk about racism and toxic fans, but there were Superman fans out there offended that they'd cast an Englishman as Superman, even though he's an actor playing a role. What fucking difference is it what nationality the actor is playing Superman? It's not like they cast, you know, a black Clark Kent or anything as controversial as that. The guy puts on a tremendous accent. He's a really trained Shakespearean actor. He looks the part. So there was a lot of pushback at first to Henry Cavill. But even though a lot of people didn't necessarily like the films Henry was in, I think even the people who hated the idea of the casting at first actually were turned around by Henry Cavill. What a gentleman he is, what a great actor he is. He absolutely is the perfect Superman. So for Superman Legacy to get, to make at least $1 billion, at the very least, Superman Legacy has to end up with $1 billion. But Zaslav will be looking for $2 billion because this is the big launch. This is your Force Awakens. This is Spider-Man No Way Home. This is the big movie, and they expect big money. And it'd be interesting if Gunn can bring that to DC Universe, considering, as we keep on saying as well, James Gunn has never, ever directed a $1 billion movie. So he needs to start delivering. And that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Zaslav has a lot of faith in Gunn, but he's never made a $1 billion movie. I think that's fascinating. But maybe Zaslav offered this role, this co-CEO of DC Studios, to many people before he went to Gunn. Rumour says it. He even approached Kevin Feige. And Feige, obviously, after finished, stopping laughing, said, "No way, mate." But, Feige hasn't covered himself in glory recently either. So, before Phase 4, I would have said, if you said to me, can we have Kevin Feige to run DC Universe? Abso-fucking-lutely. If James Gunn brought him on board now, after I finished laughing, I'd be pretty excited about that. Because Kevin Feige did, before the apocalypse, the 2016 apocalypse, Kevin Feige was doing a great job and did the right things. There's no question about that. But at the end of the day, it's about money. And Superman Legacy will be expected by Zaslav to make money or Gunn will be out. And this is what I'm talking about. So Ezra Miller is a big problem to the Flash movie, not potentially making $1 billion. So if this movie was to make $1 billion, despite of Ezra Miller, that would be a fantastic achievement, and it would say that DC is, getting people to trust it again, and people are coming in. So it'd be interesting if Zaslav's, marketing tactics work. And I think if this movie brings in $1 billion, then I think those tactics have worked. I think 700, 800, I think anything between 700 million and a billion is a great result for this movie, because that will be despite of Ezra Miller, not because of him. Now, within the film, Ezra Miller does a fantastic job because Ezra Miller is a really good actor. And, you know, the person does a really good job and gives a really good performance. So we will see. So I'm undecided how this movie opens financially, and I'm undecided if this movie can potentially make $1 billion. This has been Sunday's edition of the DC Universe Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Smash the like button if you love me. Subscribe if you're new. Please have your say. Smash the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. I will see you again in the next video. Till I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.